What would you do if your ex invited you to their wedding just to humiliate you? For Ada, this wasn't a hypothetical question. It was an invitation to war. She could have stayed home, licking her wounds in the quiet of her solitude, but she chose a different path. She decided to arrive in a way that would shatter her ex-husband's meticulously constructed world and rewrite her own story in front of everyone who had ever doubted her. This is the tale of how a man's attempt to disgrace his poor ex-wife backfired in the most spectacular way imaginable. A lesson in karma, grace, and the silent, unstoppable power of success. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Kenneth's Ikoyi mansion, casting long golden beams across the polished marble floor. He stood before a full-length mirror, a statue of self-congratulation. His agbada, woven with threads of gold and embroidered with intricate patterns, was a masterpiece of Nigerian tailoring, worth more than the monthly salary of most of the guests who would attend his wedding today. He adjusted the cap, a satisfied smirk playing on his lips. Today was his coronation. Today he would marry Kioma, the beautiful, cultured daughter of Chief Adekunle, a political titan whose influence stretched across the entire nation. The wedding was the social event of the season, a glittering fusion of old money and new ambition. But as his gaze drifted to the ornate wedding invitation on his dresser, his mind, for a treacherous moment, slipped back through the years. He was no longer in this air-conditioned palace, but in a small, stuffy flat in Surulere. The air thick with the smell of a neighbour's cooking and the constant, frustrating struggle to make ends meet. He saw Ada, his first wife, not as she was now, but as he chose to remember her. Tired, her hands calloused from grading student papers, her eyes often shadowed with a weariness he had grown to despise. He remembered her talking, her voice filled with a hopeful spark he saw as naivety, about her plans. "Kenneth, I've seen this land in Aja. It's cheap now, but with the new road project, it will triple in value in 2 years. We can start small, just an acre." He would always cut her off with a dismissive wave, his own frustrations as a mid-level banker boiling over. "Start small with what, Ada? With your teacher's salary? Stop dreaming these Jankara ventures. Focus on something real. Focus on giving me a child." The word barren was never spoken aloud then, but it hung in the air between them, a heavy, accusatory ghost. The final memory was the sharpest, the one he replayed to justify everything. He had just been made a vice president at the bank, his ticket into the elite circle he so desperately craved. He looked at Ada in their cramped sitting room and saw an anchor threatening to drag him back into the depths of mediocrity. "You are a failure, Ada," he had said, his voice cold and final. "And you will never succeed without me. You are an embarrassment to the man I am becoming." He watched the light in her eyes extinguish as he handed her the divorce papers. She left with a single suitcase, and he felt nothing but a profound, liberating relief. The memory faded, and Kenneth was back in his opulent present. His best man, Tunda, walked in, looking handsome in his own aso ebi, but with a frown of concern etched on his face. "Kenny, my guy, are you sure about this? Inviting Ada? Why stir old waters that are best left calm?" Kenneth laughed, a rich, confident sound that echoed in the vast room. "Tunda, you worry too much. I want her to see what she lost. I want her to see the life she could never have given me. Let her come. Let her eat good food for the first time in years and see that Kenneth Obinna has truly arrived." His motivation was deeper, uglier. His wealth was new, and amongst Kioma's old money family and friends, he sometimes felt like an imposter. Humiliating Ada, his past failure, was a perverse way to validate his new status. He needed a stark contrast to his perfect new life, a living, breathing example of what he had risen above. He fantasized about her arrival, her one, good, lace material looking faded and cheap next to the exquisite aso ebi of the other guests, her face drawn and lonely, the object of whispered pity. It would be the final triumphant scene in the story of his ascent. Meanwhile, in a serene minimalist office overlooking the Atlantic Ocean in Victoria Island, Adaora Ada Nwosu sat in contemplative silence. The morning light here was softer, kinder. Her PA, a young, fiercely loyal woman named Amara, had just handed her the thick cream-coloured envelope. "Auntie Ada, you cannot be serious. After all he did, this is an insult," Amara fumed, her hands on her hips. Ada said nothing. She slid a manicured finger under the flap and pulled out the invitation. There they were, Kenneth and Kioma, smiling out at her. A picture of manufactured bliss. A slow, knowing smile spread across Ada's face. It wasn't a smile of bitterness, but of quiet resolve. She had heard the whispers, of course. Mutual friends had told her how Kenneth boasted about his upcoming wedding, making snide remarks about his unfortunate first chapter. He thought she was still the broken woman he had discarded. He had no idea about the fire he had lit in her that day he walked out. "Amara," Ada said, her voice calm and steady. "Send a reply. Tell him I will be there." She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the endless blue of the ocean. "And please, ensure the children's outfits are ready from the designer. I want them to look perfect." The mention of the children, a detail she had guarded fiercely from Kenneth all these years, made Amara's eyes widen in understanding, and a matching mischievous smile finally appeared on her face. Back at the Oriental Hotel, the wedding ceremony was a flawless spectacle. Orchids and lilies filled the air with a sweet fragrance. Kioma looked every bit the political princess, draped in priceless family heirlooms. The reception that followed was even more lavish. A sea of the most powerful and beautiful people in Lagos, their laughter and chatter mingling with the live band's high-life music. Kenneth, holding a flute of vintage champagne, felt invincible. He moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations, his arm possessively around Kioma's waist. His mother and aunts, the unofficial custodians of family gossip, were already doing their work. That first wife, Ada, God bless her, his mother said to a group of Chief Adekunle's relatives, her voice a masterclass in feigned sympathy. "My son carried her on his head for so many years, but some women are just a weight. No child, no progress. It is only God that saved my Kenneth." The narrative was set, the trap was laid. All that was missing was the prey. Guests began to glance more frequently towards the entrance, the anticipation a tangible entity. Kenneth positioned himself near the main door, ready to perform his magnanimous act of welcoming his poor ex-wife. He practiced his condescending smile in his mind, the one that said, "Look at what I have, and look at what you are." He pictured her shuffling in, looking lost and out of place, and him graciously offering her a plate of food. It would be the ultimate victory. The band played on. The champagne flowed, and the stage was perfectly set for the grand humiliation he had so carefully orchestrated. He had no idea he was not the director of this play, but merely a player in a drama whose final act was entirely out of his hands. The air in the grand ballroom of the Oriental Hotel was thick with the scent of expensive perfume, gourmet food, and unspoken social calculations. Kenneth, buoyed by champagne and the adulation of his guests, felt a king in his domain. He exchanged a smug glance with his mother, who gave a slight approving nod from across the room. The final piece of his triumph was moments away from arriving. He could almost taste the sweet schadenfreude of seeing Ada's humiliation. The live band switched to a popular highlife number, and the dance floor began to fill with a vibrant display of colourful aso-ebi and joyful movement. It was at the peak of this festive crescendo that a new sound cut through the music, not from the band, but from the world outside. It started as a low, distant growl, a bass note that was felt more than heard. Then it grew, transforming into an unmistakable guttural roar, the sound of raw, expensive horsepower. It was the kind of sound that didn't belong in the background. It demanded attention, silencing conversations and causing the band to falter mid-beat. Heads turned in unison towards the entrance. Through the large, ornate glass doors, the guests saw a vision in blazing sunset orange. A custom Lamborghini Urus, a vehicle so aggressively stylish and rare, it looked like a spaceship that had landed amidst the more sedate luxury cars, was parked at the foot of the red carpet. A stunned valet, frozen in place, simply stared. The entire wedding party was now a silent, captivated audience. The driver's door opened upwards, a dramatic wing-like motion, and a woman stepped out. A collective sharp intake of breath swept through the ballroom. This was not the broken, faded woman of Kenneth's fantasy or the guests' whispered expectations. This was Ada, but a version of her they could never have conceived. She was draped in a stunning emerald green Georgia Coro gown that clung to her frame with elegant precision, the fabric shimmering under the hotel lights as if woven from live jewels. Her hair was styled in an intricate regal updo, and the confidence she exuded was a tangible force, a quiet storm of self-possession that filled the space. She looked every inch the successful CEO she was, not a relic of a failed past. But the shock was only beginning. Ada didn't look towards the gawking crowd. Instead, she turned gracefully and opened the passenger door. First, one small, impeccably shod foot emerged, then another. A little boy. His miniature agbada, a perfect replica of a classic design, took her hand. Then another boy, his face a mirror image of the first. And then, a little girl. A vision in emerald green lace, her hair adorned with tiny golden clips. Triplets. 3 beautiful, healthy children, all around 4 years old, holding their mother's hands with perfect composure. The silence shattered into a cacophony of gasps, exclamations, and the frantic clicking of camera phones. The very devices Kenneth had assumed would capture Ada's shame were now documenting his own utter ruin. The whispers were no longer of pity, but of utter, earth-shattering shock. Children. She has children. Triplets. Kenneth said she was barren. Wait, that car, that is a Dharmann Wosu, the real estate mogul. The name spread through the crowd like a wildfire. Adaora Nwosu. The woman who had quietly outmaneuvered established players to secure the most lucrative land deals in Lekki and Ikoyi. The woman whose net worth was the subject of awe and speculation in business circles. She was the poor, barren ex-wife. Kenneth stood paralyzed. The champagne flute slipped from his numb fingers, shattering on the marble floor with a sound like a gunshot, though no one seemed to hear it over the din. The colour drained from his face, leaving a ghastly pallor. His carefully constructed world, his new identity, was collapsing in real time. He felt a sharp tug on his sleeve. Kioma, her beautiful face a mask of confusion and dawning horror, stared at him, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Kenneth," she whispered, her voice trembling with a fury she could barely contain. "You told me she was a barren, struggling teacher. You lied to me. Those children, they are yours, aren't they? You abandoned your own children." Before he could form a lie, the evidence was walking towards him. Ada moved through the crowd, which parted for her as if for royalty. She acknowledged a senator, a known business associate, with a slight, polite nod. She smiled warmly at a famous actress who was one of her company's brand ambassadors. With every step, she demonstrated that she wasn't an outsider crashing his party. She was a more influential member of the very elite society he was desperately trying to impress. She finally reached the epicenter of the shockwave, the groom, frozen in his humiliation. The crowd leaned in, hungry for the confrontation. Ada stopped before him. She didn't shout. She didn't need to. Her presence, her success, her beautiful children, were a louder indictment than any scream could ever be. She leaned in close, her voice a low, clear whisper meant only for his ears. Yet the moment was so charged that its meaning seemed to echo in the silence. "Kenneth," she said, her voice laced not with venom, but with a profound, unshakable peace. Thank you for walking out. Your absence made room for my success. It was the final devastating blow. It wasn't an accusation of what he had done, but a gratitude for his failure. She had taken his greatest act of betrayal and used it as the foundation for her empire. She straightened up, her gaze sweeping over the stunned faces of his family, pausing for a second on Kioma's hurt expression with a look that might have been pity. Then she turned her back on Kenneth forever. She walked towards the dessert table, her 3 children following her, and picked up a small chocolate tart. She bent down and offered it to her daughter, who smiled a gap-toothed, joyful smile. The image was perfect. A mother, triumphant and serene, with the family she had built without him. The party was over for Kenneth. The whispers now were about him, the liar, the fool, the man who had thrown away a queen. His wedding was ruined, his reputation in tatters, his new marriage already fractured beyond repair. By the next morning, the videos and photos had gone viral. Kenneth the Clown was trending, a cautionary tale of hubris. Ada, the Queen of Grace, became an icon of resilience. She didn't need to destroy him. Her living, breathing success did all the work. And as Kenneth stood alone in the ruins of his celebration, he was forced to learn the hardest lesson of all, that the most devastating revenge is not hatred, but a life lived so well that your joy becomes the final, unanswerable word. So, we must ask ourselves, when faced with those who have wronged us, is our energy better spent on plotting their downfall or on building a life so magnificent that their memory simply fades away in its brilliant light? Don't forget to subscribe for more interest in each story, and please comment where you are watching from.